All right, good morning, everyone. Let me get going. All right. All right, U.S. market kind of a bit of a strange session. We really opened up down low and made a reversal quite early on in the day, and the entire day we pushed higher into the afternoon session. At one point, you can see there we were basically flat on the day, and then the last last hour, last half an hour, we really just puked. The market just puked the gains, a lot of the gains that it made up at the end of the day there, and was a bit of a negative finish. Building into the close, I thought we were looking at a major turnaround in the market, and that we were kind of putting our foot down against some of the volatility we'd seen. But you can see there most of the sectors down on the day. But really kind of interesting that we built up into the close and just couldn't quite hang on to it in the end, really failed it. It has a Dow down finishing 5.3% for the month, which is the first down month I think we've seen in several, but the first one of any significance in almost a year, and the S&P down 3.6%. So I think that's important. That's our first sort of look at a correction. A lot of people saying we're going to have a proper correction here, a real retracement of 10% or more, and a lot of people saying that we need to buy this thing on the pullback. So really a good mix of opinions about market professionals at the moment. So we'll see how it plays out. In Asia this morning, weak across the board, especially out of the Nikkei, with the yen really struggling. What I found really interesting was at the end of the day on Friday, one of the things I've been watching most closely in the last few sessions have been emerging market currencies, because I think that they, to a large extent, are going to tell us the story that, over the next few days of trading as we see these, the currency moves play out. Friday afternoon, we had a huge rally in the ZAR in the U.S. markets. About the last 2 or 3 hours in U.S. trading, we traded from about 11.25 to 11.10, I think. I'll show you the chart in just a little bit and how big the rally was. Interesting to see once we settle in the European session if that continues this morning. But what was interesting is that even with the kind of maybe risk-on trade happening in some of the EM currencies, we saw the opposite of that happen with Japanese yen, for instance, which was also strengthening, and you'd expect it to weaken under the same circumstance. So, Nikkei showing some significant weakness this morning on the back of the yen weakness, and we've really just seen the rest of the markets there follow suit. Shanghai, the Hang Seng, Kospi, and so I also think that there's some negative news out of China over the weekend. The Chinese PMI data, which was weaker than expected, continuing to show some contraction, not necessarily contraction, but a slowdown in growth that's happening there, and just adding to the negative sentiment out of China. All right. This morning we had Harmony had headline earnings per share down lower, loss of 21 cents, expected to be up 21 cents, with all-in sustaining costs of 397,000 kilograms rand per kilogram, dollar cost of $1,222 per ounce, and plan to reduce cost to between $1,100 to $1,150 per ounce. I mean, this thing continues to disappoint. It's so marginal at the moment. I mean, the cost to produce per ounce was literally more or less right where the gold price is spent the last quarter or so. So obviously continues to be the dog there in that space, and that's the one to short on the bounces. All right, Amplatz also this morning, earnings per share, headline earnings per share 556, expectation Bloomberg consensus was at 535, sorry, that was the guidance on the trading statement. The prior expectations are at 614. Revenue at 52.82 billion. The expectations were for 52.21, so maybe a slight beat on what we saw out of the trading statement. And then the average platinum price was $1,485 per ounce. All right, this morning out data front, we got a big couple days coming in terms of data. We're getting PMI across the entire globe for the most part. You can see there, entire European region. We're going to see PMI numbers. We're going to see PMI numbers here locally at 11 o'clock. We're going to see UK PMI at 11:30. We're going to see PMI in the States later, closer to 4 o'clock. And then we're going to see ISM manufacturing and construction spending numbers at the closing bell. So just keep an eye on that. I think markets could be a little bit muted, or a little bit hesitant ahead of what's going to be a next day or two of big data. All right, let's jump into the maps. First one we're going to talk about here is the U.S. dollar ZAR. We said earlier we're going to chat about that. You can see here what I wanted to show you. We're just going to look into a 10-day chart, which really encompasses the lows that we had seen. The lows obviously up here, the call it the double top for the time being at 1138. But what was interesting on Friday, we were totally bailing out. You can see this session from here is the start of Friday, the 31st, with this vertical line. And you can see we started to really break down. We pushed from 11:15 all the way to 11:34, and we did it very much in a straight line. Couldn't reach all the way up to test the lows, and we started to really reverse hard. And the real acceleration of that came in the second half of the U.S. session, which is here. At the end of the day. And I found it really interesting. You can see we traded through 1110. It was a huge reversal. This morning we're seeing the rand weaken back out a little bit again. But as we settle into the day here in Europe, watch for this. To me, it struck me as interesting how we had such a hard rally there at the end of the U.S. session. I want to see if that strength starts to come again. If it does, I would say maybe we'll see a little bit of a return to normality in the emerging market space. Maybe worth being able to take on some of the interest rate sensitive stocks in the short term, but that may be something that'll benefit out of the rand starting to strengthen up, because I think the market's fear at the moment is that if the rand doesn't start to strengthen up along with some of the other emerging market currencies from them doing all these rate hikes, they're going to have to continue to hike rates in order to battle the currency. So that's the last thing that they want to see. So I think some of the shares may be priced in potential additional hikes, and so just keep that in mind. If the rand starts to strengthen, it'll be a positive for those shares most likely. All right, we're going to look at the Aussie here. Aussie really just, and it was here on Friday already, but I didn't show it. I just wanted to kind of look at this. We're dropping some support here at 41,000, and a target on this thing would be at least another 1,000 points to the downside from here, or at least into trendline support somewhere in that region. So just keep an eye on this. Maybe 40,000 at least as the first stop in the Aussie to come into some sort of support. If we look at Anglos obviously we made this breakout from what was a very significant 257. We failed at it 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8 times before we finally punched through it. Doing that all over the last 6 months, 5 or 6 months. We punched up through that. Probably going to see a retest of that in the next day or two, as most breakouts will. I think the first test of that probably a decent little opportunity to have a nibble. One thing concerning simply the physical commodities starting to show a little sign of strain. Iron ore prices struggling, copper prices starting to struggle now again. So just be careful there. But at 257, maybe a decent place to nibble. Kumba, I'll show this on a 30-minute, and you can see here we've really just entered into a little bit of a consolidation period with Kumba, and however you want to look at this, either way, we do seem to be sort of moving out to the right. I suppose you could also draw this. Just take out a couple of the little wicks there. We're definitely consolidating somewhere in the range between 440 and 465. And when we get a breakout to that, one way or another, I think will be our next little move for 20 Rand. All right. If we look at MTN, I just want to show this one again. We looked like we had made a nice reversal on Thursday to the upside, and that we might start to get that again off of support. We've come down again on Friday, really kind of finished quite poorly, not finished poorly, but just traded incredibly poorly on Friday. But you can see there we're still holding trendline support nonetheless. Very important here that we do maintain this trendline support on this major pullback. So watch that today. That level is going to come in around 195, 195.50, somewhere in that area. All right, if you look at Impalas, we talked about this, I think, one of the days last week. Let's just run this from the closes. On a closing basis, this thing kind of dropped out of support a little bit here. I wouldn't say it's definitely dropped support until maybe it's fallen below the lows of the last 4 or 5 months, and that's at about 109, sorry. But we've definitely dropped out some sort of support. It looks like we're going to come down and test the 200-day, which is just slightly lower than where we closed on Friday at 112.82. But what's interesting is we're getting an incredible. Let's see if I can actually do this here. An incredible discrepancy between, Amplats and Impala, so I'll let you see Amplats on just a separate chart. Unfortunately, I can't get it. This chart looks much more bullish. We actually broken out to the upside here, where Impalas is dropping out the bottom a little bit. So we've seen a big discrepancy in the shares the last few sessions, and I think maybe not a bad opportunity for a pair trade coming up here at some point. But if Impala starts to reverse a little bit and starts to trade a little bit better like Amplats, I think it could be a nice little opportunity to be buying some down here. All right, and the last one we're going to show here is GlaxoSmithKline in London. You can see here around 1550 in pence. Definitely some sort of an area of support if this thing doesn't hold here. I think you've got to be playing this thing on the short side if you're playing anything there in London, but to an extent really making a bigger flag pattern here. So if we hold at 1550, also can be a nice little area to have a nibble. And that's it for today, guys. Thanks a lot.